Okay, if you're just joining us, welcome to the webinar. Is the recruitment industry ready for AI? And please answer the poll on your screen. And it looks like we've got just about everybody answering. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now and share results. So it actually looks like most everybody on this call, about 62% is using AI in some way or another to help their job run more efficiently. So that's really exciting. So I think there's definitely some room for improvement. We've got 38% that haven't, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. We're going to go ahead and jump into the agenda. So what are we covering today? First, we're going to start with the concerns with AI utilization. Then we're going to move into the current and future use cases of AI. And finally, wrap things up with how Tracker is utilizing AI to empower recruitment firms. I'd like to cover a few stats before we jump into the main content. Did you know that 94% of staffing firms plan to use AI in the next 5 years? To me, when I read that number, it wasn't something that was surprising with all the focus on building tech around AI right now. But what was surprising was the fact that 45% of those firms don't know what type of AI that they should be adopting. So really doing an evaluation of what's out there and testing your options is going to be crucial to moving forward. And on top of that, experts predict that 39% of recruiting activities will be replaced with AI in the next 3 years. That doesn't give us a long time to do those evaluations and plan for more personal work to be done with those recruiters. Just something to think about as we move through the presentation today. Andy, let's go ahead and dive into the main event. First question for you. What type of AI has been used and is currently being used in the staffing and recruitment space?
Thanks, Tony. Okay, so I think for those who may or may not know, the use of AI has actually been around for quite a while. The AI engines that we built back in, maybe 10, 15 years ago, specifically looking at things like ranking, we're no different, and most of the ATSs will have a form of ranking engine. The thought that goes into that is literally trying to be artificially intelligent. So the ranking engine that we have, for example, when you long list candidates, it's looking at things like prevalence. So how often words and phrases are mentioned, proximity. So when those skills were used, was it recently? Was it a long time ago? The chronology. So how long has it been used for? Duration, weighted terms. So certain things that we're searching for are more important than others. So we should apply some weighting to those. And then semantics. So, are there any other phrases, terms, or words that we can use to try and identify whether this person has those skills? That's all essentially AI, because we're trying to look at resumes in the way that a consultant would look at a resume and assess that one against another and provide you with what we consider to be a rank. And that's been in recruitment technology for many years. We also have the concept of machine learning. That's a slightly different take, which is rather than looking at specific content, we're actually learning from things that happen in real time. So take, for example, 2 candidates, one that is always getting to interview or to offer stage, one that is always getting rejected. We almost have a ranking within that as well, a personal ranking that we can apply to the AI output to actually give you more accurate ranking based on what we learn as we go through. So be under no illusion that AI has played a part in certainly in the recruitment space, which is where we're trying to dissect a lot of information very quickly and think like a human in terms of assessing and ranking that information. It's been around for a while. Okay, the big revelation was really that GPT suddenly seemed to come along, and that brought then AI into the world of really the non-technical. Plus, it introduced essentially natural language processing, being able to then go and look at that information and then present that back in a natural language as well. And that's really where the step change is in the sort of the current use of AI, probably as we know it now. And this is what more than likely has brought it onto your radar. Right now, in most ATS platforms, you'll see that they call it generative AI. So this is around content creation, content summarization. Those are the sorts of things that we see within generative AI. And most ATSs are now trying to pepper that into their product because they want the AI badge. So they're trying to drive basic use of AI, and that is it's a very powerful tool, sort of entry-level use of it. there are a lot of niche players entering, and you know, most of the people, I guess, that are using AI in some way, shape, or form that's maybe not in the Tracker platform will have found or come across tools that are looking at, you know, interview transcripts and so on and so on. And there are a lot of niche players that are now coming into the space, professing to be sort of AI, recruitment AI tools. Some of these are, you know, are flawed. You know, some things like that are only looking at interview transcripts, for example. You know, look at this logically. You know, you have a resume. You know, 70% of that probably is absolutely clear. 30% of that you're actually going to talk to them about in an interview. Half of that interview is probably talking about, you know, their hobbies and you know, do you know this restaurant and so on. And then the other half of it is actually talking about information about that 30%. So really, you're only looking at 15% transcribed and then trying to make sense out of that information. So some of this technology is it's making it very difficult for our clients to sort of navigate and understand as to whether that technology is relevant. Does it actually make us any better at what we do day to day, or is this just trendy? Will this company even be here in 6 months' time? We're really in the flux of that process right now. You're on mute, Storm.
There we go. And what do you think about predictive analytics, Andy? Is that a standard in the industry right now, or is that something that's going to be coming in the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of future state. I think people are going through an evolution of AI, and we'll touch on that at some point. But really, the end goal is to drive value, use AI to drive value in the business, not just to try and replace people as such. It's about how do we drive additional value in the data that we have, or the interactions that we have with people, and using AI for like insights analysis, predictive analytics and stuff like that to actually make better decisions. So better, you know, data-driven, data-fueled decisions.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump into the top concerns. So can you let us know what you think the top concerns with AI usage is?
Yeah, well, I guess the main one is that, you know, people are probably concerned that this is going to take over the role of the consultant. And what people need to realize is that the recruitment is, and really should always remain, a very people-led industry. You know, every working person has been touched by recruitment in some way, shape, or form, whether that's interviewing somebody for a role in their team or interviewing for a role in their in somebody else's team, their company. So it touches all of us. And I think, you know, looking at that stat that you were looking at before in terms of that sort of 39%, what does that actually mean? Well, it means that yes, AI has got a part to play, but AI is not, you know, it's not this magical solution to everything. It cannot detect things like soft skills. We have facial expression analysis and so on, but you know, a human talking to another human when they make that hesitation, when you ask them a, you know, a poignant question about a certain piece of experience or something, there's a pause or a hesitation or you know, that stuff it needs to be, can be detected quite easily. Cultural fit, you know, you're working with clients all the time and you're trying to understand, you know, what is it that the company is looking for in terms of the people that are going to come in and be effective. Maybe that you're working with a candidate and you're working them through a career path that needs to work in order so that they reach their goals. This is a very, very people-led industry, and they really are the things that the clients are using agencies for, right? So when we look at what is it that AI is doing, it doesn't have all of those things, and it doesn't have a BS monitor, right? We all sit there and can assess that when we're interviewing people. That's the stuff that we don't get right now. I mean, we know that this is not necessarily the case. So that 39% productivity that you mentioned earlier, Stormy, is kind of, you know, where does that go? That's either straightforward cost cut, right? So I can do everything I'm doing, put in AI and be 39% more efficient potentially, and say, right, I don't need 30% of my staff. Or I can flip that and say, actually, I can be 39% more effective. I can do more work with the people I have, or I can engage better or deliver a higher quality. And that's for the agencies to decide. But I think that's really where we should be looking at AI adding to the recruitment industry, which is it makes us better at what we already do, which is engaging with our clients and engaging with our candidates. The other main concern, I guess, is around the fact that AI is somehow infallible. We often have, I mean, I guess there's probably a few people on this call, whether they're using it again in Tracker or outside, that have said, oh yeah, no, let's try and get this to write blog content for me, or an email for me, or a letter, and so on and so on. What we've got to remember is that AI only knows what it's been told. So it's pre-programmed, and that is the P, right, in GPT. So it's essentially programmed with knowledge. And that knowledge has been fed to it from specific types of people who are building that content. So it only knows effectively that data, and that can make it very biased in the normal world. It's also quite good because actually it looks at data in a slightly different way. And if you take, for example, SatNav, anyone who has, I don't know, traveled to either place of work or the parents' house that's, you know, however many miles away, and they always go the same route, always drive the same route every single time because it's what I know. And then they go to SatNav, and SatNav says, okay, but there could be traffic here and so on. So I'm going to take you a slightly different route. And then you go that different route, and you're like, wow, that's actually, yeah, that's quite an easy route. I found that a lot easier. The car didn't stop, wasn't sitting in that traffic jam. And even though it took 2 minutes longer, it was actually a much nicer drive, went through the countryside and so on. So it's thinking about things in a slightly different way to how we as humans are typically programmed to think, because that's how we've been taught or managed. So it's great in that it's able to think sort of almost outside the box, but it is kind of programmed to think in a certain way because it's being fed with a certain amount of information. Not so relevant when you're looking at, you know, summarizing CV data or job descriptions and so on, because it's working on that as its fact. But that's an inherent concern, and that could make consultants essentially lazy, or even communicate the wrong thing, which is that they are relying on the content generated purely by AI, not starting to check it and actually sending wrongful information out. And that's a main concern as well, I'd imagine.
Thanks, Andy. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. Let's go ahead and go to the next question. Can you share what you expect the future use cases of AI will be?
Yeah, so I think I'd probably break this down into probably 3 main chunks. So generative AI is kind of like the easy one. That's sort of where we are now. So this is things like content creation, summarizing complex data. So that may be you know, taking a resume and saying, I want this in 4 bullets, very focused on a pharmaceutical job or something similar. So it's summarizing complex data. It's also looking at things like data enrichment. It could be looking at translation and those sorts of things. So that's kind of like where it sits in phase 1. Most people are kind of already sitting in that phase, or should be sitting in that phase. Second one really is around the pushing of engagement. And that's typically engagement with your customers. That's your clients as well as your candidates. So that's things like, I don't know, so how can we identify everyone, I guess, on this call has gone into one of those interviews having looked at their resume and said, all right, okay, this guy's turning up in 3 minutes for this interview, and I haven't really digested the resume, so I'm just gonna wing it and go through it at the time. Go, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So it says here, tell me about this. You're not doing a good job. You're not doing justice to that candidate. You're also, if you've got 60 applicants coming through and you're trying to chew through all of that information across 60 resumes, by the time you get to resume 30, you probably don't give a monkeys about the rest, whether they're any good or not. You're probably just looking for scanning for keywords and so on, and that's just human nature. So the engagement piece is actually pretty key, which is actually, can we disseminate that data for you and give you prompts to actually what we think is good and bad, and actually points where we think this resume is it's deficient of information in a particular way. So I would ask these questions because that's where it really doesn't quite line up with the job, whether that's your screening questions, your standard screening questions, or actually whether that is your job description. So how can I compare that to a resume and make use of that very quickly? So I've got information to hand. So that's a key one. It's also things like, you know, you can organize interviews, address common FAQs and things like that. So, and again, it's all about making you more reactive to clients by using AI to actually ask questions and try and answer them intelligently. And then using it for things like, you know, job recommendations. So reverse engineering, taking a resume from a candidate and saying, okay, well, if I boil this down, actually, what type of role would they do? And again, this comes down to sort of thinking outside the box, which is that, well, actually, their skills actually seem to be pointing more to a manufacturing role really than a management role. So, you know, maybe they should consider that. So using it actually to help generate ideas around how you can further engage with candidates. And then the last one I'd say was probably intelligent data, and that's really where it gets super exciting. And that's where, if you take, for example, all of the data in your business and you say, this is all you know, then you can actually then use a GPT engine to say, tell me stuff about my business, look at this in a different way and tell me things about my business that maybe I don't already know. So that's things like, my sourcing ROI. So where am I best going to get my candidates from if that is in temp, light industrial? So very, very specific things that we can actually start to drill into. Data farming, natural language interfaces. These are the sorts of things that really then take it to the next level. So I see it really breaking down into that. And I see it really as the ATS providers. We're the ones that for many years have worked in the industry and built the software. It's our responsibility to do the research for our clients and really understand actually, how does AI help the process that we know and have supported over many, many years, so that we don't have all of these this noise that is like, yeah, this stuff is great, it's gimmicky, it's wonderful, and it looks brilliant, and it's going to cost me $300 a month. And then in 9 months' time, it's really delivering me nothing. So I think it's really our responsibility to look at the future of AI in rec. And really, there's a basic rule. If it drives efficiency and effectiveness or business development, it's probably good tech. And that goes pretty much as tech has always been. If it doesn't fit one of those bills, then it is probably gimmick.
Now, I know Tracker has a lot of AI focused roadmap items coming. And I think some of the items that you talked about through, historical AI usage, current AI usage, and then some of the future items, we've kind of covered some of those things. But can you share with us how Tracker's leveraging AI to empower these recruiters and speed up the hiring process?
Yeah, sure. So we've always been this is always technology that we've been aware of, and it's now obviously taken a step change forward in terms of the engines that we can plug in and what we can do with data very quickly. The beauty of Tracker, I guess, is because it's a single source of truth, but our front, middle, and back office all sits within one solution. So whether that is video content, whether that is onboarding forms, everything, all of that information sits in one single source of truth. And that is paramount, really, because as you move through this evolution, if you like, of AI and recruitment, you don't want disparate sets of data, right? You want one source of truth where that structured data can be analyzed as one, and that is essentially the source of all truth for your business. Okay, so from our side, we're striving to that piece. That is for us utopia when it comes to the adoption of AI and recruitment. Right now, we tick the box on generative, so that's things like JD creation, JD polish, authoring. So writing the basis of communications, whether that's WhatsApp, text, email, marketing templates, whatever those be, giving consultants almost like we call it the 80-20 rule. We should essentially be producing 80% of the content. They need to review that content. They need to then tweak maybe 20% of that content. And that is the saving that we want to try and do. It's the efficiency, the productivity that we provide through AI. Things like candidate CV polishing. So typically you have a resume in from a candidate, but you actually want to pitch it specifically to a mid-management levels job in retail. So it's about saying, okay, can we rescan or rebuild this CV specifically to that, and also summarizing. So we will often summarize that in the email for the client to very quickly understand what do we consider to be the key points for this particular candidate. Is again making that targeted towards the actual job itself. So that's a really key one for us in terms of that whole generative piece. As far as engagement goes, we're next week at the expo in London, we'll be launching our new product, which is called Compare. And that is compare with AI at the end, obviously. What that does is it basically allows us to analyze a resume, look at the job description, or look at a set of questions that you would always ask for maybe this type of role or for this client and so on, and very quickly point out exactly where we think this candidate is strong and where we need to follow up. Okay, these aren't weaknesses, these are follow-ups. And that's really where we're trying to understand, okay, these are the points that I need to focus on. This is my 3-minute prep savior, if you like, because I can see actually this is where this candidate is already playing well, and where we have deficiencies in the resume that I need to address. This goes on to another level, which is that you could actually turn these into screening questions and send that to the candidate to get filled in. It could also be that actually we do that as part of the application process. So on our system, we have candidates that will come into our application process. They will give us their resume at the beginning of that process, and actually we can chew through that and create screening questions for them. So by the time they get to the end of the application process and confirm their details are correct, we'll say, actually, can you just elaborate on the following couple of things? Then when that resume comes in, that applicant is seen by the consultant. Not only do they have their resume, we have the strengths and the follow-ups, but we also have the questions that we asked and the elaborations that the candidate gave, so that the consultant is armed with the most information they have. Plus, for the candidate, it's a great experience because they've been asked that at the point that we have their undivided attention, which is when they're applying for the job in the first place, rather than it being a follow-up, which we then got to keep, chasing and bouncing around to try and get the information that we want. So that for us is a really cool tool, and that's something that we'll be dropping out next week. And also the things like reverse engineering. So we were able to take a candidate resume, reverse engineer it, and actually go and look for jobs either in the system or actually on the web, by using essentially AI to reverse engineer a resume into a job search rather than a job being used for a candidate search. Super powerful for business development, because essentially you're saying, I can take a very good resume and actually try and find prospective clients either inside Tracker or in fact on the market itself. So those are the key ones that we're doing from an engagement point of view. And then the last one, which is kind of like it's bleeding edge really in terms of ATS technology, which is that a natural language interface to the database. So we created Eva, which is our evolution voice assistant. So this basically will allow you to have an open conversation. This kind of completely changes the dynamic of people working with software, okay? And that's probably one of the most exciting bits that AI really is going to deliver for us, which is that if you can have a natural language conversation with a piece of software that's then going to provide you information back, you will interact with that in a very different way to the normal process of, I need to open this record, create this, fill in this field, send this email, and so on and so on. You're actually talking to the system and asking it information. For example, can you find all candidates with a particular skill in a particular area, or can you send an email to John Doe for me saying the following, and have that just pop up and open that for you? Can you assign Bob to job 1, 2, 3, 4? How many people have I got out working, or where are most of my temp industrial candidates coming from? Which clients should I talk to this week? Those are the things that really we should be doing, and actually interacting with software in a completely different way. And that really is where GPT is powerful, taking that natural language thing, breaking it down, pulling back very complex information, summarizing it and giving it back in a way that is actually adding value. And for me, that's probably, again, utopia, and it's really where AI should be going.
All right, Andy, thanks so much. Lots of exciting things coming out with Tracker. Okay, I want to be cognizant of time. It is 11:30 right now. We do have quite a few additional questions. So if your question did not get answered today, we will definitely shoot you a message and get those questions answered for you. But thanks so much for attending, and can't wait to see you at our next automation webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.